So have you ever felt that your good-naturedness, your empathy, or your compassion, your kindness, your flexibility have actually cost you, have held you back, have resulted in you wasting your time on stuff that other people were not spending as much time on? And at times, my guess is if you experienced this, you might have felt resentful. Resentful that you were getting stuck with some of the crappier jobs and tasks. And over time, people weren't even asking you anymore. They may very well have just expected that you would do it. That you were always the one that was kind of doing a lot of the juggling, taking care of everything, but it didn't necessarily feel reciprocal. And all of this results in you feeling burned out, exhausted, or inefficient, not doing stuff that matters to you. Has any of that happened to you? This is the agreeableness tax. We could call it the empathy tax. We could call it the compassion tax. I mean, if you really wanted to be mean to yourself, I guess you could call it the doormat tax, but I think that's probably too harsh. I think it's fair to call it the agreeableness tax. There is good evidence out there that nice folks tend to finish last when it comes to measurable metrics like salaries and leadership. Especially nice men take that hit hard. Agreeableness is in fact associated with stuff like lower incomes. And it can make sense. I mean, the agreeable folks not only are more likely to go into helping professions, which always pay less, they may be more willing to go with the flow, follow the rules, not take up too much space, and put their needs secondary to the needs of the job or organization. They may be less likely to advocate for themselves for a raise or something like that, especially if it's communicated to them that the organization may not have the money. We also know that agreeable folks are more vulnerable to getting stuck in narcissistic relationships and may feel more negative emotions such as pity and even a sense of guilt for the narcissistic person. Agreeable people are sort of built better to make excuses for other people's behavior, to be more forgiving. Now, none of this agreeableness stuff is actually bad stuff. It's actually lovely stuff, and it can make for some very healthy, safe relationships. Well, it gets problematic, though, when it is a narcissistic relationship in question, and then the narcissistic person will take advantage of this agreeableness, and then over time, the agreeable person feels worse and worse. I'm saying and using the term agreeableness because that's a measurable personality trait. But like I said, I could just as easily be saying compassionate people or very empathic people or kind people or really, really flexible, easygoing people. Agreeableness is a technical personality term that takes in, not agreeable, like I agree with you, but it takes in territory including being very trusting of other people, being straightforward, being non-manipulative and clear in communication, caring about what happens to other people, being collaborative, being willing to compromise, being cooperative and humble and sympathetic and empathetic, right? So that's agreeableness. Now, people with these characteristics are more likely to do all sorts of things in relationships, including things like apologize, even when something was not your fault or responsibility, appeasing other people, sacrificing, going the extra mile, offering to help, even when you're off the clock, doing a disproportionate amount of work compared to others, caregiving, planning, cleaning up, anticipating. You're the ones who stay late. You do the dishes after the party. You're the one who was willing to talk to the difficult neighbor. You smooth over conflicts. You change your plans at the last minute to accommodate other people. And people, over time, very quickly know that they can come to you with their asks because you are nice and you say yes. In fact, the no is hard for agreeable people because it's at odds with who you are. So this agreeable tax, the empathy tax, call it what you will, it's paid everywhere. It is paid in families, it's paid in intimate relationships, it's paid in the workplace. Listen, this doesn't necessarily happen, this agreeableness tax. The agreeableness tax doesn't necessarily happen because you're surrounded by narcissistic or antagonistic folks, but the tax is even more extortionate if you are. Oftentimes, the agreeable, empathic, nice folks are easy. People know that you ask them that things are going to get done without much resistance. As an agreeable person, you might even do the thing with a smile on your face. There's no anticipation that you're going to go quid pro quo on their asses. But that means that oftentimes the agreeable folks are carrying a very high burden. I actually did a video a little while back about a study that came out about the toll that having hasslers, people who create problems and make life difficult for us in our lives are. And in that study, they found that the more hasslers a person has in their lives, the more rapid their biological aging. It's telling us that this agreeableness tax may very well be paid in lots of different ways, including with our health. Now, in the workplace, this agreeableness tax is often most noticeable. It's a sort of form of mission creep. It's a slow death by 1,000 cuts. The agreeable person early on, there's a willingness to do the extra things. Initially, again, because you're nice, maybe because you're new to the job, but you do have some ambition and you want to hold on to the job or you want to make a good impression, right? As I said, a narcissistic boss or colleague is always going to exact a greater tax. But even regular colleagues or managers or even bosses who are just taking the easy way out know to turn to the agreeable folks to get things done with the least friction, to bail them out. Do you mind just doing this one last little thing? I know you do so much extra. I hate even asking before they even get that last part out. If you're agreeable, you're already doing the thing. They may something to you like, I know that vendor is a pain in the arse, but you seem to have a way with them. And before they can finish the sentence, like I said, the folks who pay this agreeableness tax will often, for a whole laundry list of reasons, of course, just being nice and helpful, but also could be because of safety seeking, fawning from earlier in life, perhaps just, again, your compassion, your empathy, your agreeableness, your go with the flow, a combination of all of this. This agreeableness tax gets paid again and again. But the toll on that, just like if we have to pay lots of extra taxes, that accumulates on our wallet. This accumulates in our health. It's tough because some of us started paying this agreeableness tax as children. Not necessarily to make our lives go easier as a kid, but to make it run safer. And frankly, the agreeable, easygoing, flexible kids, especially if they do have narcissistic parents, they do pay a tax. Agreeable kids are often pulled into being asked to help out in a way that's disproportionate. We might see this in parentified kids who are being asked to step into numerous household responsibilities that are in excess of their age and may not account for other roles the child has, such as going to school, being a student, or just the stuff of being a kid. And this only happens because it's just easier for the parents. Sadly, the nicer the person, the greater the taxation. And the very people who have to be able to find that no, to be able to say no, are the ones for whom saying no will be the most difficult. And it is naive as hell to think that other people in systems, in workplaces, in families, or just the world at large will stop asking the agreeable, warm, empathic folks to do more stuff than everyone else. The asks will keep coming only because it's easy. We tend to turn to the tool that does the job best and most efficiently. And while it doesn't feel good to feel like an object that gets things done, that is the dynamic that is in play here. It's like doing your actual taxes. You have to find the deductions if you want to pay a little less. I don't know. I suppose in these agreeableness tax situations, finding those extra deductions is the equivalent of finding the way to say no. Because I promise you this, people aren't going to stop asking you to do stuff. And it's not easy to say no. It may bring up guilt, fears of rejection, fears of abandonment, or just plain physiological discomfort to say no. However, this tax, especially if it's being exacted in multiple areas of your life, work, home, social groups, is going to tap you out. Is it realistic to expect folks who are naturally empathic and agreeable and giving to advocate for themselves in this way? I think so. They may be baby steps to start. It sure as hell isn't realistic to expect people to stop asking. And maybe simply thinking of it as a tax makes sense. Because would you ever want to overpay your taxes? No. And even the feds get around to sending that overpayment back. So this good stuff in you, and it is good stuff, your empathy, your compassion, at times your willingness to go the extra mile, your flexibility, your helpfulness, all of it, it's really wonderful in the right hands. But it also means that you become an easy go-to, and that does take a toll on you. It means that there's a risk that you may not care for yourself adequately, push yourself too far. It means that you may be overextended. It may even mean that at times you feel resentful, and then you feel guilty about feeling resentful. Sometimes you have to say, nah, I can't stay late tonight, and I'm sure you'll figure it out. Or you say, yes, I can stay late, but I'm assuming that does mean overtime. Or you can say, no, I can't run to the store again for your party. Sorry about that. And I know even if you hear that, you may feel uncomfortable for a minute. But you may end up breaking a precedent that has been taxing you. And honestly, once you get through those first few no's, you start getting better at it. It's a balancing act to not lose the lovely, connective, kind parts of yourself, but also be aware that this agreeableness tax is real. And people will often take advantage of it, not necessarily in a cruel way, but simply because it's easy with you. And at a minimum, understanding the existence of this tax may help you have more compassion for yourself at those times when you feel drained and just want to be alone. And if there are people in your life who don't tax you, hold on tight to them, because they are basically a tax shelter. Thanks again.